Good day, grade 12s. My name is Carden Madzokere. I'm the author and publisher of the Distinction Bound Student Textbooks, and welcome to a preparation for paper 2. So this video focuses on paper 2 essays, right? So there are 25 possible essays for the final exam, and for the mid-year exam, it will be 12. So for mid-year exam, it covers macroeconomics, it covers microeconomics, only these 12. So in this video, I'm going to mainly focus on these 6. So the ones for macro, I'll just run through them. So we have this one for markets, so it's specific. I see some learners will confuse this essay when they see 4-sector model. They start talking about households, businesses, government, and the foreign sector, 4-sector model. But we don't have an essay in grade 12 that talks about participants. So it's markets. So make sure these are your headings in that essay. The second essay is the new economic paradigm. And these are the headings. You'll see, I'll show them in passing. Then we have this one, the third one, which is features underpinning forecasting. Then the fourth one is macroeconomic objectives, IFEPE. The fifth one is reasons for public sector failure. My little brother plays soccer at Sundowns. Then the last one is reasons for international trade. So we have demand reasons and supply reasons like that. Now, I'm going to skip this because I usually don't recommend economic pursuits. Then micro, I highly recommend. So this is our video today is going to focus on 14 to 18, if not to 19. Okay. So the first one is examine in detail the various equilibrium positions with the aid of graphs. So what we are going to see is that we'll have to be able to draw an economic profit of a perfect competitor. You see, this one comes from perfect. So it's under perfect markets. So you should be able to draw economic profit 1, economic loss 2, normal profit 3. Now with the aid of graphs, obviously, and then for short run. Then explain normal profit with the aid of graphs, long run. And then explain shutdown point using revenue revenue curves though, fixed cost, variable cost, total revenue, and explain graphically AR and AVC. Okay, so you should be able to do this, or just explaining shutdown, but graphically you must only show AR, which is the demand curve, which is the marginal revenue curve, and the AVC. So don't go in depth. You'll see the one that I'll show here sort of goes in depth, but according to what we see here, it's not even necessary. Right, then number 15, discuss the monopoly in detail with or without the aid of graphs. So here, if they say with, then you draw. If they say without, then you don't draw. So the one I'll show you is with. So if they say without, don't bother. Don't even bother because they are not awarding marks for those graphs. So you are just wasting time. So you read, but what I'll show you is with graphs. So let's have a look. So the concept as in what is a monopoly, then what are the characteristics? Now, what should guide you mostly, what I say, is be guided by these 12 criteria here. I'll always try to stick to this, even though these are 2 separate essays, but this is our guide. We compare and contrast market structures using these. So when you discuss the characteristics of a monopoly, just use this. It's easier that way. Right, so economic profit. Take note. Economic profit, economic loss, short run. So 2 equilibrium positions for the short run. Take note that we do not have, we do not have normal profit. Do you see that? And then we repeat economic profit. Here we have economic profit. I want you to see this. Here we have economic profit. Do you see that? We have economic profit again. You see that here. but the difference is short run and long run. Now, it'll be the same graph, but I'll show you where the difference will be. Then the next one, examine in detail an oligopoly, right? Characteristics. So the minute you see characteristics, just be guided by this. Try to always stick to this. Then a king demand curve. Okay, you'll see. Then compare and contrast. So any two market structures, again, using this. So it's 3 essays that speak the same language. The only thing is you must then also be able to draw just a few graphs, 4 in particular, like 1, 2, 3, then 4 dekinked. So these 3 essays are more like one essay. Trust me, it's more like number 17. Then it's broken just to focus on one, which is monopoly, broken again just to focus on one, which is oligopoly. Then again, compare and contrast two market structures, which could be compare and contrast a monopoly with an oligopoly. So these 15, 16, 17, it's like one thing. So there are 6 essays like we saw, and 50% of those, it's more like it's one concept. So why would we say another module is easier than this? There is nothing easier than what we are going to write about tomorrow. Then market failure. Discuss in detail how the following factors lead to the misallocation of resources in a market. So this one is mealy. You know what I mean by mealy. If you don't, I'll show you just now before I go to the... Then the last one, discuss in detail state intervention as a consequence of market failure with the aid of relevant graphs. So you must be able to explain direct control, imperfect markets, minimum wages. Here, you should draw a graph. Maximum prices graph, minimum prices graph, taxes and subsidies, which could be your graphs maybe on, positive and negative. Right, then government's involvement in production. So this is it. But then, like I promised to tell you what milli is, I make use of mnemonics a lot. So milli is this one. This is a mnemonic for reasons for market failure, milli. See, that's what I meant. Then we also have if this one was an essay, but not anymore. But ifepe is, there we have it. It's an essay. Then we have sentence mnemonics here. This is an essay. My little brother plays soccer at Sundowns. This one also, and so on. All right, so let me jump to our essays. So I'm going to show you this in passing. Then I'll focus just on paper 2. So we have this one for markets. Take note of the headings, and you see that we get marks for just saying the heading, and we give you a maximum of 8 marks. Here it's a mistake. It's supposed to be 1 tick. I'll fix that. Right, this is essay number 2, the new economic paradigm. We have demand side policies, and under which we talk about fiscal and monetary policy. Then we have these graphs. This graph actually that shows the effect of demand and supply side policies, but I'm not going into that. Then we have our Phillips curve here, which shows the relationship between inflation and unemployment. Then our supply side, there we have it. Then we have top essay number 3, which is our features underpinning forecasting. So we talk about our indicators, which is leading. A couple of examples. You don't need to have all this. I give you many so that you just pick one, because that's the maximum you should at least have per concept, maybe, let me put it that way. Then lagging, there's no need for you to master all of them. Just pick one that you can remember. But just imagine you write lagging indicator, you get a mark. Then you give us an example, you get a mark. Again, this here is supposed to be 1 mark. Okay. Right. Then coincident indicators, there we have them. Then composite, we are done. Then let's look at the essay number, now it's what, number 5? I don't know. Right, discuss in detail states macroeconomic objectives. This is our IFEPE. We saw it there under the mnemonics. There we have it. It's one of the easiest. There we have it again. Right, then Discuss in detail factors that contribute to public sector failure. This is your my little brother plays soccer at Sundowns, like that. There we have it again. Then the last one, discuss in detail reasons for international trade. So we have our demand reasons. There we go. Then we will also have our supply reasons. That's it. So in this particular lesson, we are going to focus on paper 2. So it starts right here. So my introduction to the video is quite long, 10 minutes. But I think it's important as well. So examine in detail the various equilibrium positions with the aid of graphs actually. Right, so the graphs that you should, so they'll tell you the graphs they want you to be able to explain. Okay, so the first one here is economic profit. So you should be able to do this. Now, take note, you must label here price, cost, revenue, like this. And here, you might not need to worry about this side, maybe just put some numbers. I prefer to write numbers here. Okay, so what's going on here? This is our horizontal demand curve. We know that it should be horizontal because we are price takers under a perfect market. So this price of 10 will have been determined by forces of demand and supply in the industry. So we take that market price of 10 and we have a horizontal demand curve. The next thing is now we have to figure out at what output to produce. But to answer the question, we produce at a point where marginal cost intersects marginal revenue. So in this case, we construct our MC, and our MC is Nike shaped like you see here. Then point E here is our point of profit maximization. So from this point, we get our output of 100 according to this graph. And then now we apply the rule that says the AC cuts the MC at its lowest point. So according to this, here is where the AC cuts the MC. So the rule was not violated. This is the lowest point for sure of our AC. So definitely this is what you should do. So you just make sure your AC is less than your AR. So this rectangle here represents economic profit. So when we mark, we look at correct positioning and labeling of cost curves. So which cost curves do we have? We have marginal cost, we have average cost. So those two cost curves earn 1 mark. Then correct positioning and labeling of revenue curves. So which revenue curves do we have? We have average revenue, we have marginal revenue. Then the next one, the indication of profit of economic profit area, which is equal to 1 mark again. So you must indicate your economic profit. If you don't do it like this, shade the area, and then somewhere you say the shaded area represents an economic profit. Then label your axis. So I mentioned on your axis, make sure that you have price, cost, and revenue. You have quantity this side. And the last one, okay, labeling of axis again. So they are giving 1 mark this side, 1 mark that side. Or labeling on, sorry. Labeling on axis means that here you said 10, 8, you said 100, that's 1 mark. Then you said quantity, and you say price, cost, revenue, that's 1 mark. So we are giving a maximum of 4. Now, here's something that you need to be careful about. When you have to draw and explain, some of you might feel right now that 4 marks is too little for me to draw a whole graph and get 4 marks and then explain. The thing is, if you don't do it like that, then what are you explaining here? So you are going to lose marks for explaining because you did not even draw the graph. So make sure you draw the graph, then you explain the graph. So the graph is just aiding your explaining. So if there is no graph, what are you explaining? Because I've seen their learners would do that. Okay, so this here is just explaining what I was saying. So you can say it the way I said it, or you can pause the video and read this. Right, the next one shows us economic loss. I won't say some of the things I already said. I just point out that, yes, we have our horizontal demand curve. And again, the rule that says the AC cuts the MC at its lowest point was not violated in this graph. So this is correct. Now, here's a mistake that learners make. When they draw MC like that, that's fine. Then they draw AC. Maybe they don't violate the rule. Here's the mistake they make. When they draw this output, when they get to this E here, they'll go this side. Then they'll take it from here and draw a line from here, drawing it coming this side, which is wrong because we are not producing this output here, like 115 or something like that. We are producing 100. So at 100 units, what is the cost on average? So you have to maintain the straightness of this line. You don't have to follow the MC. I see learners making this mistake. So here, the concept, make sure your average cost is greater than your average revenue because you want to show that the firm is making an economic loss. Then you explain the graph. Then the last one, you have to make sure that the AC is sitting right there on the line. Again, the rule was not violated. The rule I'm referring to is that the AC cuts the MC at its lowest point. Now, this clearly shows that our average revenue is equal to our average cost. Therefore, we are making a normal profit. So you then explain that one. Right, the other part that you need to be able to explain is our long run equilibrium output. So here's what happens in the long run. It depends on what we had in the short run. So in this case, let's see. We have an industry here with our demand curve. Unfortunately, it's not labeled. Here it's supposed to be D. Take note. And then we have our supply curve, which is S1. Okay, so maybe you can make this D1 according to what you see here. You just go with the flow. Now, with this, we have quantity here and we have price P1. Now, this is then taken by the individual here. So if you see this line here corresponds with this P1, you see this. If we had made use of numbers instead of P, P1, and so on, it would make more sense to say 10, 10 here. But you see P1, P1 like that. So with that, if we look at our cost curves, it shows that our average cost is less than our average revenue. Because if the price is P1, the average revenue in question is this AR1. So with AR1 is greater than AC. Therefore, the firm is making an economic profit. Take note. Now, what does economic profit do? Well, economic profit would attract new firms into the industry. Now, since we know that there are no barriers to entry, new firms will enter this industry, and when they enter, supply is going to shift to the right. So when supply shifts to the right, now we have E2, and the price drops from P1 to P2. Then the firm will have to take that new market price of P2. Now, take note, at P2, our AR2 is equal to our AC. Therefore, the firm is making a normal profit in the long run. Okay, so that's the explanation of this graph. Now, what if we had an economic loss? Now, take note, different from the graph we had before. Do you realize that our initial price is P1 here, which is lower than P2? In this case, P1 is greater than P2. Take note of the difference. Now, what story are we telling here? Let's assume that now we are not making an economic profit like we had here, but in this case, let's see that what if we are making an economic loss? What will happen? Well, this here is an economic loss because the price we are taking from the industry in the short run is P1. Now at P1, we are looking at this average revenue 1. and we're comparing it to this average cost. Now, clearly you can see that this average cost is greater than this average revenue. So the firm is making an economic loss. Now, this economic loss will cause firms that cannot cover their variable costs to shut down and exit the industry. So when those firms shut down and exit the industry, we're going to see a shift of supply to the left. Here, we saw that supply increased, but here we see that supply is going to decrease. So if supply decreases, we have a new point of equilibrium, which is P2. Now, this P2 is then taken by this individual. And then when the individual takes this P2 price, now its average revenue, AR2, is equal to AC. Therefore, the firm is making a normal profit. So whether it was an economic profit or economic loss, it will become normal profit in the long run. So basically, that's what you're explaining here. Now, the last one is the shutdown rule, which states that a firm should consider shutting down if its price is less or equal to its average variable cost, or its total revenue is less or equal to its total variable cost. So let's look at this. Now, this is where I was saying the one I have there is a bit complicated. I'll take you back to where we got it from. So we got it from here. All this comes from the examination guidelines, and it guides us as to what they actually look at. So I'll take you back here. Look here. Where is it? The one for equilibrium positions. You see that they say, and explain graphically AR and AVC. So according to the examination guidelines, you don't necessarily have to worry about many other things here. Like AC here is not even important. So the AR that you will have to draw here is just this one. So they want to, or any, if you have your AR here at 8 Rand, you are still okay as long as you have an AR. If it's there, what you would do in your explanation, you would have MC. Oh, they should have said MC as well, because it becomes impossible without MC. So they should have said AR, MC, and AVC. True. So MC is definitely important because that's our supply curve. It has to be there. So what you have to show is an average variable cost curve that is shaped like an average cost curve. And then you must have a marginal cost curve. So your marginal cost where it intersects AVC, that is the point of shutting down. So you should just be able to show this. But what's going on here? This here is just showing that if price or AR is greater than AVC, the firm should continue. So if the price was 8 Rand, continue. If it drops to 6 Rand, continue. If it drops to 4 Rand, shut down, because now you have reached the shutdown point. So this area here does not represent our supply curve. This area here represents our supply curve. So that's it. Okay, so done with essay number 1. Essay number 2, when we look at essay number 2, it says here, discuss a monopoly in detail. This one is not going to be difficult because you're just looking at something that you have learned for the longest time. Here, there is not really much new concept. From grade 10, you know what a monopoly is. So let's look at it. So there is only one seller in this industry that is selling a unique product that has no close substitutes. Monopolies are usually the result of barriers to entry. Now, these barriers are either artificial or natural. So you can then use that as an opportunity to explain a natural monopoly and an artificial monopoly. So things like patents, licenses, sole rights, all this, they are barriers. But a perfect market does not have these. So these are barriers. So these barriers cause the existence of artificial monopolies. But if none of this exists, but other firms naturally cannot join you, then you become a natural monopoly. Now, collusion is impossible since collusion involves two or more firms just trying to work together. Then information is complete under a monopoly, and then there is significant control over price. However, it doesn't mean that a monopoly can just charge excessively high prices, because he's still faced with a downward sloping demand curve. So demand for his products should still exist regardless. Right, then we also have the demand curve that I just talked about, which is downward sloping. Then in the long run, economic profit is very much possible. Unlike in case of a perfect market, if I take you back here, the reason why this price changes to go down is because of new firms entering the industry. So this economic profit will change to normal profit as new firms enter the industry. However, in case of a monopoly, that entry is blocked. So let me go to long run equilibrium. You see here, it is possible for monopolies to make economic profit in the long run because new entries are blocked. You see that. So this is key. So take note. Right, then non-price competition. Yeah, barely you would see monopolies using non-price competition because they are not competing with anyone. So Eskom cannot say we have the best electricity in South Africa. Come on, you're the only ones giving us electricity. So what do you mean? But you would hear FNB saying, how can we help you? To try and say, we are up for service. Come, we can help you. Give us your problems. We'll be able to solve them. Or it's finger licking good. That's KFC trying to lure us to them and say, ooh, if it's finger licking good, then I need to try it. Right. So then decision making for a monopoly is independent. It doesn't affect anyone. Unlike in an oligopoly where decision making by one firm definitely affects others. Then technical efficiency cannot be achieved by monopolies. These people would restrict output and charge a higher price. Right, then allocative efficiency cannot be achieved either. So monopolies are notorious for allocative inefficiency. Right, then examples, we have Eskom and Transnet. Let's look at the graphs, because remember it was saying with or without the aid of graphs. So let's assume it says with. What are you going to draw? So you have to have a downward sloping demand curve, which is equal to average revenue. Then from there, you have to have a marginal revenue curve. If you go and look at the cost and revenue schedule, you will see that monopolies, as they increase output, price tends to decrease. So they have a downward sloping demand curve. Now, with that said, each additional unit is sold at a lower price. So marginal revenue will definitely not equal AR and D. So under a monopoly, unlike in a perfect market where these three are equal, D is equal to AR and equal to MR. Under monopolies, it's not equal. So since it's not equal, we are going to have this kind of a situation. Okay. Now, with that said, we also have a marginal cost curve. Do you realize that it looks just like the one for perfect, which is like a Nike shaped? So take note, and where it intersects MR, that's our profit maximizing point. So this monopoly will have to produce Q as quantity. Now, with that said, from this Q, our price will be determined by our demand curve. So you have to, from this point, once you get this point, you must draw a straight line all the way up to the demand curve, not up to this point here. That's why I was deliberate in not having a line coming from here. So what you do, you will have drawn, so you would start with DAR, you draw MR, then you draw MC. Once you draw MC, look where MC meets MR, then you make a dot there, and you label that point. So like in this case, it's E. It doesn't mean it always have to be an E. Then from here, draw a straight line from quantity all the way up to D. So once you touch D, then you draw this line going to your cost, revenue, price axis. So then you write P there. Once you do that, now decide where do you want, what kind of a profit are you showing here? So if you want to show that the firm is making an economic profit, then you'll have to make sure that your AC is lower than this E1. You see at E1 here, that is our average revenue at Q unit, you see? So at Q, our average revenue is there. So your AC must be anywhere below this point here. So in this case, it's here, right? It must be U-shaped and its lowest point must cut the MC, just like we said there. Right, so from anywhere where it corresponds with our quantity of Q, you then draw your line going this side. Now, so many people think that it has to be here, but no, there is no such a rule. AC can be anywhere. You can push it up, nyana, you can push it down as long as it's below, because it's possible for cost to be way below and this firm will have big profit margins. It's very much possible. So all you have to show is that. Now, because you might be showing short run and long run, you might then need to put an S in front of this A and put an S in front of this M. Then it becomes SMC, SAC. Right, contrary to this, same way of explaining, but now our cost is above. You see, the point I was showing you was this one. Look here. You see this point that I called E1. In this case now, that point is here. Do you see why I'm saying it's here? Because this is our profit maximizing point. Then we draw this line until we touch D. Remember I said until you touch D. So here. So this point is the same as this point. The only difference is where this AC is. In this case, this AC is below. In this case, this AC is above. But again, we do not violate the law that says the AC cuts the MC at its lowest point. Look at that. This is the lowest point of our AC and it cuts the MC right there. Now, another mistake that learners make from here, they want to go there. I don't know what they want there. Just this is a straight line. So make use of a ruler. From your E, this E is very important because that's our quantity, that's our output. And why? Because that's where we maximize our profit. So from here, make sure this whole thing is a straight line until you touch AC. Now that's the economic loss. So yes, monopolies can make economic loss in the short run. However, the thing that we are not showing is normal profit, and don't show it because no one asked you to. And don't even argue and say, but yes, a monopoly can make it. Okay, it can make it, but who asked you to draw it? No one. So according to our exam guidelines, don't draw it. Okay. Now, moving on, we then have the last part, which is our economic profit. But you see, this graph is exactly the same as this one here. The only difference is, like I said, throw in an S. In this case, throw in an L. So you explain the same way and everything is the same. The only difference is throw in an L to show that in the long run, monopolies will make economic profit. So that's it in as far as these three graphs are concerned. You see, where is it? 1, 2, 3. So this graph basically, this one here, this one, economic profit, is the same as this one here, economic profit. The only difference is the other one has an L. The other one, we can ignore the L because when it's like this, yes, it's short run. But when it's long run, we have to throw in that L, even here, LAC. Okay, so that's that. Let's move on to discuss an oligopoly in detail. So when they say discuss an oligopoly in detail, you have to define what that is and use the same criteria that I was talking about, number of firms. So in an oligopoly, there are only few firms that dominate the entire market. The product in an oligopoly is either differentiated. So it is differentiated in a differentiated oligopoly. And it's homogeneous in a pure oligopoly. So this can give you more marks. And you can give an example. Then that can also, add to the marks that you are aiming for. You will definitely get your 26 easy. Then entry in an oligopoly, well, it varies from restricted to free to restricted. But yes, barriers do exist. That's why in most cases would have few firms in it. Right, information is incomplete. You see here it says neither producers nor consumers have full knowledge. So this can be a reason for market failure. Remember what market failure is: failure of markets to allocate resources at an optimum level. And one of the reasons, if you check, let's have a look here. One of the reasons, if you check, is lack of information. And also this, imperfect markets is a reason. And right now we're talking about an imperfect market. So yes, neither producers nor consumers have full information. It means then we could have asymmetric information. What they have and what we have does not tally. So they will overproduce or underproduce. And the minute they don't allocate, they underproduce or overproduce, they failed to allocate resources at an optimum level. Okay. Right, then control. Well, oligopolies do have considerable control over price because first and foremost, there are few in the industry and each one could be making something relatively differentiated from others are making. Right, then there's mutual dependence under this market structure. In other words, what a decision that could be made by one could affect the other. Then the demand curve in an oligopoly is kinked, and we are going to show you that kinked demand curve just now. So a kinked demand curve is basically a demand curve that has 2 degrees of elasticity in it. So we have at a higher price, demand curve is highly elastic, and at a lower price, it's inelastic. So this is what we see here, and this demand curve kinks at this point here, A. So the best price then for the oligopoly will be P and the best quantity will be Q. Now, this oligopoly would risk losing a lot of customers if they increase. Let's see here. If they increase up to here, look, just from here, look how much they lose. If this is 100, this looks like 4. So imagine from selling 100 units to selling 4 units just because you wanted to make more money here. Definitely you won't make. Because if this was 10 rand times 4, that's 40 rand. And so if this is 10, okay, 10, maybe you increase to what? To 15. 15 times 4, that's 60. Now, if this is 10 and this is 100, so that's 1,000. So would you want your total revenue to go down from 1,000 to just 60? You wouldn't. So you will stick to the price of P. However, it's not like it's the end of the world. That's when you start doing non-price competition to try and win customers over. So oligopolies do not play the price game. They usually do non-price competition, things like branding, things like creating some loyalty, where they can have a card where a consumer will swipe, earn some points, and then they keep coming back, something like that. So yes, that's what happens. And so this keeps happening and you keep gaining customer share. So you try many methods. You do door-to-door deliveries. You will extend your shopping hours. You could do business online, things like that. Okay, you could advertise, many things. Then collusion is highly possible, but it's illegal here in South Africa. So yes, collusion is possible. And then non-price competition, I just talked about it. Yes, they do it a lot. And then economic profit can be achieved due to the same reason. Restriction of entry causes economic profit to be made in the long run. Then productive and allocative efficiency are not achievable. Right, that's it. Then the next one is compare and contrast two market structures. So take note here. They want perfect for imperfect or imperfect for imperfect. What this perfect to imperfect means is like compare and contrast a perfect market with an oligopoly, a perfect market with a monopoly, like that. Then imperfect to imperfect is like an oligopoly to a monopoly, or a monopoly to monopolistic, or monopolistic to oligopoly. So yeah, but so since there are many options, here I'm just showing two, and then you learn to compare and contrast any two. Okay, so do it. So for me, I did imperfect to imperfect because I'm doing here oligopoly to monopolistic. So here's how you would say it. Take note that since you'll be saying the same thing and then tell us how it is for the other one. So it's the same concept. So it gets 2 marks. However, the 2 marks is kind of like split as you see here. So if you say like monopolistic competition has a large number of sellers, well, so you are talking about number of businesses. So we are not going to double award you number of businesses because you have been awarded already here. Because some learners will not do it like this. They'll say characteristics of a monopolistic. Then they say number of businesses. Then they talk about monopolistic, they finish. Then they say the heading again and say number of businesses. Now, under oligopoly, then we won't award you marks because we have already awarded you marks. So also on that concept, there are a large number of sellers. We are not going to keep giving you marks for that. So we award marks the way you see it here. Whereas a few large, okay. So here there are many. So we can say many to replace large. Here we can say few. You see? Here there are large businesses in most cases, yes. And here there will be many. This is a large number of sellers. Here the large is not referring to the fact that the businesses are big. It's referring to that there are many. Here there are few firms that are large in size. Okay, that sounds confusing. So to change that, you can just say monopolistic competition has many sellers, whereas a few sellers in an oligopoly, something like that. Right, there is a high degree of competition, and here it's kind of limited because here there are way too many, here there are just a few. Okay, so clearly you see that. Nature of product, then you say, so you just keep saying the opposite. So this one will be easy. And take note, don't just stick to what you see here because they might not ask you monopolistic and oligopoly. So the most important thing is for you to know the distinction between the market structures. And let me try to jump to... I hope I won't take too long to get the page that I would want to show you, which would make it very easy for you. Okay, I think I'll find it from here. All right. Okay, no, not under this. Yeah. I'm almost there. All right, almost there. Few pages there. Right, so what you need to master is this. If you can just master this whole table here, this whole table, you see, this whole table, all market structures based on the 12 criteria. So if you know that, okay, perfect, there are many, monopolistic many, oligopoly few, many, monopoly one. Once you know this, know it like this. However, when it comes to writing, don't just say many few write it like this in form of a sentence. So you just construct sentences and you are getting your information from this table. So this table must be in your head. You must know this table from, and you see, if you know this table, you can do the essay, discuss a monopoly in detail, 1, discuss an oligopoly in detail, 2, compare and contrast, 3. So this table will give you all the necessary skills for you to answer 3 essays. So nothing is more important than this table right here. Nothing. However, don't get caught up in just saying many, few, free, restricted, blocked, impossible, possible, impossible. No, don't get caught up in that. Know this, but when it comes to writing, write it like this. Sentences. All right, so I'm done with this. Then the last 2, discuss in detail causes of market failure. Okay, now market failure, like I said, is failure of markets to allocate resources at an optimum level. So the reason why markets fail is simple, merely. What do we mean by merely? I mentioned it before. Well, the first one is missing markets. So here the concept is we for a market to exist, certain conditions must prevail. So if those conditions do not prevail, markets may struggle to exist. And this is common with pure public goods and services. So something can be missing for that matter, because the things that make a market to exist do not prevail. So if they do not, then a market won't exist. So this is common with pure public goods and services. Why? Because number 1, they are non-excludable. Number 2, they are also non-rivalry. Okay. So the next one is imperfect competition. So with imperfect competition, I mentioned it over and over again, that the problem we have with, the problem we have with imperfect markets, like monopolies, is that they cannot achieve productive efficiency, they cannot achieve allocative efficiency. If you read, there we have it here. Right, the next one is externalities. Well, externalities are costs or benefits that, that are not included in a market price, but then they do affect third parties. So we also call them spillover effects, we call them neighborhood effects, we call them third party effects. So the reason why under in terms of demerit goods, we say they cause negative externality and they cause market failure is because, more of something that is socially undesirable is produced, and then in case of something like education, less of something that's socially desirable is produced. So market failure because there's underconsumption or underproduction of merit goods, and in terms of demerit goods, there's overproduction, and they do have a negative externality because they do affect third parties in a negative way. And we are going to show that how later on. Okay. Right, so we have externalities, and some of the concepts you need to understand is what you see here. Here I'm giving examples of negative externalities in production, also in consumption, then also here negative in consumption. So you need to just go through that. Then you need to understand private costs, which is the cost that is incurred by the person that decides to, to consume a good. Now the good could be positive or negative. The externality from the good could be positive or negative. In other words, the good can be a merit or a demerit good, but private cost will be the cost. So private cost for education is the school fees you pay. Private cost for a cigarette is the money you pay to buy the cigarette. Then there's private benefit, which is the benefit to the person that decides to consume the good, be it a merit or demerit good. So the private benefit for drinking is to get drunk. So you probably enjoy that, being drunk. Like to those who smoke, they would say it's a good feeling to be high. I've never been high my whole life, but they say it's a good feeling. I don't want to try it. Then in terms of education, for instance, the benefit is that you become educated. You get a degree, things like that. So that's the benefit to the individual. Then negative externalities or social costs. These are considered to be private costs plus external costs. So the cost that you incur here to acquire the good plus the external cost, but in this case it says negative, so it's then just the external cost. So if we change this to positive, then it becomes your private cost plus external benefit. Okay, so we have two costs in a negative, and we have two benefits here. Look, external benefit. So even when we show it graphically, you will be able to see, but you only see it in the next as a state intervention as a consequence of market failure. Right, then lack of information. I once spoke about it in the beginning when I was saying assume that we have asymmetric information. Well, we will either overproduce something or a good can be underproduced. So the reason is buyers and sellers do not have accurate information. Okay, then imperfect distribution of income and wealth. When there is an unequal distribution of income and wealth, because the market is only interested in distributing goods and services for those who can afford it. So that means those who cannot afford will be sort of sidelined. So there'll be market failure of markets to allocate resources at an optimum level. So it's needed, but they cannot afford it. So more like markets will say, to hell with them, we don't care. But then government then ends up intervening and trying to see how they could probably redistribute this income and wealth. Well, some think it's not a good thing. Well, that means they like capitalism. Those who think no, there's a good thing, then the ones who think there's a good thing for government to just leave it like that, that's capitalism. Those who think no, government must actually ensure that there's equal distribution, that's more communism. Right, then immobility of factors of production. This is another reason. Labor is very, very notorious in this. People don't usually want to relocate to areas that they may be needed. Let's say their services are needed elsewhere, but then the problem is people are usually tied to areas that they grew up in, to jobs that they are currently at. Things like pensions could make someone not want to move to another place. So as a result, the person might be needed elsewhere, but because labor is notoriously immobile, I had an opportunity to go and work in Guyana, and I was going to get more money, but I'm used to Pretoria, and just thinking about relocating to Guyana, the temperature there was so bad, mosquitoes and whatnot. So I just decided, no, I'm not gonna go. So you see, that is proof that labor can be immobile. So you can try to lure them with more money, but labor is notoriously immobile. Capital is another one that is notoriously immobile. You can read that. All right, the last one. Discuss in detail state intervention as a consequence of market failure with the aid of well-labeled graphs. Okay, so here you must be able to explain direct control. How can government do this? Well, in terms of positive externalities, what can government do? In terms of negative, what can government do? Right, then imperfect markets. Government can deal with imperfect markets by having a policy that they call a competition policy. Well, we have it here in South Africa. Or government can make use of minimum wages, which tries to deal with this problem here. The last one that we had, was it the last one? Well, the second last one, the 1 year imperfect distribution of income and wealth. So minimum wages can try to help to redistribute income. So this means that what happens is government would say, okay, no. Let's try to have these high income earners redistribute their wealth with low income earners. So let's say this is the free market wage, the wage without government intervention. Well, then government feels like this is too low. then they impose a minimum wage above the market wage. So if that happens, then quantity demanded would drop, as in many people who used to hire, let's say, a helper will decide to do the work themselves. They'll say, I'll clean my own house, I'll do everything myself. They used to need a gardener, now they're mowing their own lawn because the wage that they will have to pay the guy has gone up. Then also the flip side is those people who were not willing to work as helpers and gardeners will now want to work as helpers and gardeners just because the wage has gone up. But then it creates problems more than it solves problems, because it's going to create this huge gap between those who are willing to work and those jobs that are available, because now these guys feel like they cannot afford to pay this high wage. So in as far as government may be trying to solve a problem, they're actually creating a big problem. So I'm one that is very much against minimum wages. I feel like let the market decide. Well, this statement I'm putting here is good enough for conclusion, because now you're sort of giving your opinion. Right, then we have minimum prices. Well, minimum prices can be useful, but they cause surpluses. Okay, and contrary to what I even wrote here, because now it's like it's like a norm here in South Africa that we say, they are used to enable producers to make comfortable profits. This is the dumbest statement ever. Like, nothing is as stupid as this here. I've said it before, I'll always say it. It makes no sense to say if you charge minimum prices, it's going to profit producers. Actually, it's going to harm more than it's going to rectify something. Now, let's have a look. But I also strongly feel that minimum prices are useful. But where they're using them for, if they're using them to make producers make more money, that's very stupid. But if they use them on demerit goods, they can be very, very much useful. How? Well, assume this is the price for Savannah. Here, let's say 20 rands. And this will be the quantity demanded and quantity supplied for Savannah. Let's say 100. Now, if government imposes a minimum price for Savannah and make Savannah 30 rands, demand for Savannah will drop, which is, we already clap hands. Wow, people are drinking less. So problem solved. But if you do it on essential goods, like you see here, essential goods. Okay, let's pick something. Tomatoes. Okay, so they say they usually use them on farmers. That's why my mind will always go to tomatoes. Okay, this is the market price for tomatoes here. And this is the quantity demanded for tomatoes at the market price. Then government wants the producer, as in the farmer, to make more money with tomatoes and then makes tomatoes more expensive. Well, demand for tomatoes will go down. But remember, we're saying tomatoes are essential. You see what I'm saying? That's stupid. If it's essential, then demand goes down. Then it defeats the meaning of essential. Something that's essential should be produced and consumed more than what this intervention does. So I'm not saying minimum prices are stupid. I'm saying if you use them on essential goods, that's stupid. But if you use them on demerit goods, that's clever. Okay, moving on to the opposite, which is maximum prices. Well, maximum prices are useful for merit goods, I would say. Something that we want to be consumed more. But again, there's a problem. Do I advocate for maximum prices? Yes. Assume this is brown bread. This is the price of brown bread according to the markets. This is how much we are consuming or demanding. Now, if a maximum price is set, well, then brown bread will be undersupplied. That's the only problem. Because if it's now undersupplied, it means that we are now consuming less brown bread than we were before. So again, there is a problem. And this one, in a way, could be something debatable, but then quantity demanded can then increase. Now, to maybe deal with this shortage, then maybe that's where government can also come in and and supply. So government can get involved. So government can come in, set a maximum price, and then also produce so that there's no shortage. So if government can meet this extra, then it would be the best. Now, coming back to this, I'm also thinking right now as I'm talking about that okay, what if government sets a minimum price to make producers more profitable? It's good if they do this and then subsidize. That way, then producers, yes, can make more money. Because if they subsidize, then it takes the price back to market price, for instance. But then what would happen? There will be maybe an increase in consumption. So if they say the good is essential, but instead of going through all that trouble, the best will be implementing minimum prices on demerit goods and maximum prices on merit goods. That's the best. All right, so government can tax to ensure that maybe a good can be under consumed, and government can also subsidize to ensure that a good can be under consumed. All right, there's also this part here which I would want to change a bit, but let me have a look. All right, so here we also have these two graphs, which will be the last ones that I'm explaining. Now, this here says negative externality, but how is this a negative externality? Well, this demand curve represents benefit, and this supply curve represents the cost. So cost benefits. Ne? Now, if you look at this demand curve, this will be marginal private benefit is equal to marginal social benefit. And this E here will be marginal private benefit. Now, this is the price of, let's say, alcohol, market price for alcohol at equilibrium E. The supply curve represents our marginal private cost. So this will be the cost incurred by the person that's drinking alcohol. And this is the benefit that is enjoyed by the person drinking alcohol, because there is a benefit. That's why he's even spending X amount of money to purchase the product. Now, but what's the benefit to the community? Zero. So here we are saying the marginal private benefit is equal to the marginal social benefit. So the benefit to the individual that decides to consume the good is equal to the benefit to the entire community. And here, this is the cost to the individual. But it doesn't just cost him, it also costs others. So there is this external cost. So this external cost will then shift the supply to the left, causing the overuse to be dealt with. So then this becomes the optimum allocation of alcohol. So alcohol can be drank in moderation if we put the external cost into consideration. So this curve here represents marginal social cost. Okay. Then the opposite is true here. We also have a demand curve representing the benefit and a supply curve representing the cost. So E is our equilibrium, and then the market price or the market quantity here is Q, and the market price is P. So this is something like education. Now let's analyze this. What does this represent? It represents the cost. So what cost do you incur to acquire education? Well, you pay school fees. Then what benefit do you get from school fees? From education? You become educated, you get a degree, so you graduate, and you can use that to look for a job. So there is benefit. Someone who has a degree would say, yes, I have something that many people do not have. So it's a benefit. You understand? So this is, but the benefit to the individual, this is the cost to the individual. Now, does the community pay school fees for you? No. So here, the marginal private cost is equal to the marginal social cost. Because that's the cost you incur for your school fees is the entire cost for the whole community, because the community is not paying school fees for you. But here, you benefit. But there is a benefit to the community when you become educated. Well, one of the benefits is that there is less crime. So minus one person without, who's, crime could go down because of education. Let's agree on that. So it's a benefit to the community. You could use your education to empower the community. That's a benefit to the community. So all that, there is a benefit to the community, but the community is not paying a cent towards your studies. You understand? So there is no external cost. There is only a private cost. However, there is an external benefit. So to not confuse these two, just know that when we have two supply curves, then we are saying there's a social cost. When we have two demand curves, then we say there is an external benefit. Okay. So this is our marginal private cost. Private benefit. This is our marginal social benefit. And this is our marginal private cost is equal to marginal social cost. Right, so this is the equilibrium that is optimum. And so this is the price that takes the external benefit into consideration. And there's the quantity that is optimum. It takes the external benefit into consideration. So how do markets fail in this case? Well, markets fail because they overproduce a good that has an external cost. How do markets fail in this case? Well, they underproduce a good that has an external benefit. Okay, so this is our last essay, and this has brought us to the end of our video. Quite long, but very useful. So I wish you all the best. Thank you so much. God bless.